Crazy Frog, or the annoying thing, was a computer-animated amphibian pretending to be a motorcycle while his CGI genitals flapped happily away. And for a brief time, he was one of the most important entertainment icons ever. Sound clips featuring the frog led the company licensing him to be worth $500 million. Adverts featuring him appeared on TV 73,000 times in May 2005 alone. And he capped it all off with a UK #1 single, beating the biggest band in the country as he did it. And not only a UK #1, Crazy Frog's Axel F topped the charts in Australia, Belgium, Denmark, Hungary, Ireland, New Zealand, Norway, Spain, Sweden and Switzerland. Looking back on this 20 years on, a question is probably forming in your mind.
Why? Why?
Why were we like this? Why did the UK and the rest of Europe lose its absolute mind over an ugly creature making a dumb sound? And why did 500,000 people in Britain love this dumb sound so much that they wanted to hear it stretched to 3 minutes and mashed up with the theme from Beverly Hills Cop? Come with me as we head into the mid-2000s, into the booming ringtone industry and even the human brain.
Who are you? I'm the brain cell.
The brain cell?
Yeah.
Just you, yeah?
As I try to answer one question. How did the Crazy Frog become so popular?
Ding 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 ding.
One day in 1997, a Swedish 17-year-old called Daniel Marmadal recorded himself doing an impression of the two-stroke engines of his friends' mopeds. This sound originally distributed among Marmadal's friends via a CD they used to play at parties. Seeing the reaction it would get, one of those friends put the sound onto the web. We had many laughs because it's so characteristic, this two-stroke engine sound. My friends found it funny when I started imitating it, he told the BBC. When we recorded it, we laughed until we got tears. In 1997, 70 million people were internet users, about 1.7% of the global population. By 4 years later, this had grown to 513 million. It was then, in 2001, that this sound got its first flush of fame, when Daniel was invited to phone into a Swedish TV show to perform it. While the sound was being broadcast into Sweden's homes, it was also having its first viral moment on the web. The sound started to appear on forums and websites alongside an image of a red racing car. This soon evolved into early internet meme website The Insanity Test.
1. Turn on the speakers and allow the page to load fully. 2. Stare at the picture without laughing for 60 seconds. 3. If you start laughing, consider yourself legally insane.
The original posting, the Swedish TV appearance, and the Insanity Test probably brought the sound to a few 100,000 people, but it would take theatre director turned animator Erik Vernquist to bring it to millions. Taking the idea of someone doing an impression of an engine, he creates a character to make the noise as part of a job application for a CGI company. He posts a work in progress on an animation forum. Don't really know what this thing is. It has ended up looking somewhat like a frog, I think. The ambition has been to make a character that gives an annoying impression. So, roll eyes. What do you think? Does this guy annoy you? The comments are positive, but there is some argument about his very visible genitals. For God's sake, give the little guy some pants, says Lee, with Milkman adding, give the frog some dang pants. That's just disturbing. Chewie gets more philosophical. Do frogs really have wieners? Erik Vernquist worked on the 40-second skit for around 2 months before putting it onto his personal website and onto a computer graphics forum. He went from getting a few clicks on his website a day to 6,000 within 2 months. And it just kept growing from there in a way that bemused the creator of the character now called The Annoying Thing. I thought it was going to be just a one-off quick thing, but it turned out to be even more popular and unpopular than that. I do not know really what more to say. It was an interesting experience with lots of ideas. There was lots of commercial interest, but it was never something I could really relate to, and I did not know what to do with it. It just kept going for a while. Meanwhile, the ringtone market was exploding. In 1996, the digital Minimo D319 had been the first phone which allowed users to add their own ringtones by using the number pad. It was clear this could be a big business. A book in Japan, which showed you how to recreate popular tunes on the device, sold 3.5 million copies. In subsequent years, mobile phone technology moved ringtones from monophonic to polyphonic and into true tones, actual clips of songs with real instruments and voices.
Get the brand new official Gwen Stefani ringtone or true tone on your mobile.
There was a lot of money to be made in this new industry, worth $3.5 billion by 2004. And one of the companies best equipped to capitalise on it was Jamster. The mobile phone content provider had made a deal with Warner Music to distribute their artist catalogues as mobile phone content, bringing some major artists into the ringtones game. This included Madonna, who became the first major artist to preview her upcoming single through ringtones when Jamster released snippets of Hung Up. They did not just sell single ringtones. Instead, mobile phone users could text a number which would subscribe them to a service where,
for just £3, choose up to 5 ringtones a week.
As we well know from our modern culture hellscape, a subscription service requires a lot of churn of content to keep people interested. And so they were always on the hunt for original sounds they could license. And it is here they came across a short animation of a frog-like creature making the sounds of a motorbike. They got hold of Marmadal and Vernquist and licensed what they would rename as the Crazy Frog. It seems that the pair didn't know what they had, with the CEO of the company Vernquist worked for calling the deal way too low. Jamster, meanwhile, definitely knew what they had, leading us to the first reason that Crazy Frog was able to get to number 1. Though the exact first transmission of the Crazy Frog advert has been lost to time, by January 2005 the ad for Crazy Frog ringtones was played hundreds of times on certain TV channels over the past few weeks. This was just the tip of the Crazy Frog iceberg. Jamster spent £45 million on advertising in 2005, 1/3 of that on print ads and the other 2/3 to allow the anarchic amphibian to dominate TV ad breaks. That brought them a lot of airtime. In May 2005, Jamster ads played 73,000 times across British TV. That works out at nearly 2,500 times a day, 100 times an hour, or about 1.5 times a minute. It was played so much, in fact, that even its creator seemed to tire of it. I would never do something like this again. As much as we might feel that we see the meerkats endlessly on TV, there has never been an advertising campaign like Crazy Frog before or since. According to The Guardian, the average Briton saw the ad 26 times, sometimes twice in the same ad break. It aired so often, in fact, that there was a flood of complaints to the Advertising Standards Authority, who replied that they could not control how often an advert was played. They would, however, eventually ban the ads until after 9 PM, after receiving hundreds of complaints that the adverts were being marketed too aggressively at kids, and that they didn't make it clear enough that users were signing up for a subscription service rather than a one-off payment. Not that this seems to have affected Jamster's sales. According to KPMG, this sound alone took nearly 1/3 of the British ringtone market in 2005, or a staggering £40 million. As the ringtone service cost £5 to subscribe to, anything up to 8 million British people bought the Crazy Frog tone. Of course, buying the tone was no guarantee that you wanted to buy the single. There were many millions who got their Crazy Frog ringtone and stopped for the sake of their own sanity. But there was certainly no escaping the adverts, which meant that everybody who was in the market to buy the single definitely knew it was coming out, especially when you add in all the press coverage over the chart battle with Coldplay. I was going to say that these adverts gave Crazy Frog publicity money can't buy. £30 million bought this, making the £2 or £3 singles basically a loss leader in order to sell more £5 a week ringtone subscriptions. As a strategy for selling a single, it's pretty poor. You spend 7 figures on adverts and make 6 figures in sales. But of course, the single was just a value add on the juggernaut that was Jamster's 2005 ringtone market. And it worked. By June, the ringtone had been downloaded over 11 million times. As much as the adverts were complained about, and the ad was named the most annoying of the year in a poll conducted by Marketing Magazine, clearly millions of Brits liked it. But why did this self-described annoying thing capture the hearts of a country and then a continent? Maybe it's as simple as people found it funny. While I'm aware that the best way to make comedy stop working is to explain it, one lasting theory of humour is the incongruity theory. Here's William Hazlitt describing it back in the 19th century. Laughter may be defined to be a convulsive and involuntary movement, occasioned by mere surprise or contrast in the absence of any more serious emotion, before it has time to reconcile its belief to contrary appearances. What Big Willie is saying here is that laughter is a reaction to seeing something that upsets the natural order of our expectations. This works as an explanation for why the insanity test or 2tactair.mp3 worked as pieces of comedy. We expect to hear the sound of an engine, but instead hear a boy's strange impression of the engine. An incongruous and unexpected sound. The annoying thing, though, adds layers upon layers of incongruity. He makes the sound and motions of riding a motorcycle and wears a helmet, and yet doesn't have a bike. He wears a biker's jacket, suggesting he has a concept of clothing, and yet doesn't cover his noticeably protruding genitals. And the sound he makes is pure incongruity. Is it a man, a frog, or an engine? It is at once all three and none of them. It is inherently absurd. I can try and intellectualize it by talking about theories of humour, but clearly it appeals to whatever lizard part of our brain it is that loves animal noises and silly voices as babies. With the annoying thing, Vernquist had literally and metaphorically created a monster. A comedy character who, like Mr. Bean before him, tapped into a languageless form of comedy that could translate anywhere in the world. This monstrous element could also be key to why some find the frog so amusing. Neuroscientist Vilayanand Ramachandran has speculated that laughter may have evolved as a false alarm mechanism, whereby we can communicate quickly that something is safe, even if it is strange or incongruous. As reported in Science Line, if you're an ancestral human, says Ramachandran, and you come across what you think is a dangerous snake, but actually turns out to be a stick, you're relieved, and you laugh. By laughing, you're communicating, all is okay. That explains why millions of people might find this strange creature so amusing as to buy the ringtone, but it cannot fully explain why they would have gone one further and buy a dance banger featuring this character. Sure, Britain has bought songs of negligible musical quality featuring characters it loves before, see Mr. Blobby and the Teletubbies, but was there also something in this song itself that encouraged people to buy it? In 1988, Jimmy Cauty and Bill Drummond, soon to be of rave pioneers and million-pound burners the KLF, put out a book that guaranteed anyone who followed its instructions a #1 hit or your money back. Though the pair were mostly pranksters, they did have some experience. As the Time Lords, they had recently reached #1 with Doctor in the TARDIS, a song that jammed together the Doctor Who theme, Gary Glitter's Rock and Roll, and Sweet's Blockbuster in a way not a million miles from the jamming together of Crazy Frog and Axel F. In fact, a lot of the things Cauty and Drummond recommend in the manual are true of the Crazy Frog record. It has to have a dance groove that will run all the way through the record that the current buying generation will find irresistible. It must be no longer than 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Lyrics, you need some, but not many. The simplest thing to do would be to flick through your copy of the Guinness Book of Hits, find a smash from a previous era, and do a cover of it. If there is no cover that takes your fancy, the trick is to construct your song out of disguised, modified, and enhanced parts of previous smashes. The manual is an arguably satirical exercise in exposing the record industry's cynicism, but it's not entirely wrong. This pattern is recognisable from dozens of #1s from over the years, encompassing everything from Roxy Music's Jealous Guy to Mars's Pump Up the Volume to Sugar Babe's Freak Like Me.
I'm just a jealous guy.
And certainly this idea of appealing to multiple quadrants of the record buying public was in the label's mind. Steve Tandy, whose Gut Records put out Axel F, told Music Week, "The British love of novelty records is an ageless thing. Kids like the record because it's funny, students like it because it's culty, and adults like to annoy other adults with it. But surely we as pop music fans can't be so nakedly exploited. If it were that easy to have a #1, surely everyone would be doing it, and the Kia Asylum would have to close its doors."
Rita Ora, the thing flop.
There is research, however, that backs up at least some of the manual. As far back as 1968, social psychologists wrote about the mere exposure effect, in which mere repeated exposure of the individual to a stimulus object enhances his attitude towards it. In short, the more you hear something, the more you like it. This is true both of sections within a song, explaining the popularity of the very repetitive Axel F melody, and of songs in general. A cover has the psychological advantage that we may already be familiar with the original and are predisposed to like it before we've even heard it. The marriage of Crazy Frog and Axel F, then, is a marriage made in heaven, or hell, depending on your point of view. One of the catchiest songs of the 80s, combined with a sound it was nearly impossible not to be exposed to. Musicologist Matthew Butterfield argues that repetition creates anticipation in our brains. Each time the hook comes around, our brains are engaged by wondering whether the pattern will continue or break. Too much repetition and this process can bore us, but even the slightest variations are enough to keep us engaged. Hence why Axel F moves from a minor key in its chorus to a major in its verses. But why does it drive some people to distraction and other people straight to the record shop? Well, that's all a matter of taste. Some have trained themselves to love music of more rhythmical complexity, much like one has to train oneself to eat olives. And once you have a taste for antipasti, it's easy to look down on those of us still eating our egg and chips. These people, with their musical equivalents of little cubes of cheese and artichoke hearts, need to accept that, for some people, hearing a song they have fond memories of from the 80s sung by a funny frog is enough. Is it a record company cynically playing on people's nostalgia? Maybe, but it works. It may be as simple as some people bought this record because they liked it. Because Axel F is basically a weapon of mass catchiness, designed to lodge in your brain and never leave. But that is a very positive way of looking at things. The world isn't just a case of a cynical music industry taking advantage of a gullible, rude public. The public can also be just as cynical. If there's one thing Britain likes to do, it's to take the piss, especially if it's at the behest of any authority. This is the nation, after all, who were given the task of naming a new polar research ship and called it Boaty McBoatface. A country who voted for novelty acts like X Factor's Wagner and Strictly's John Sargent for week after week, rather than actually talented singers and dancers. A people who cannot walk past a statue without wanting to put a traffic cone on its head. Why are we like this is surely a question every other country asks about us. For me, it stems from being a country where the vast majority of us spent centuries under the yoke of a ruling elite, of royalty, aristocracy and landowners. As such, every time we get a chance to prick someone's pomposity, we take it. You see this in British comedy, which often features characters in authority being brought down a peg or two, be it Basil Fawlty, David Brent or Blackadder's Melchett. But most often, you see it in the music charts. There is nothing the British public loves more than seeing an act who take themselves desperately seriously, or who seem like they're inevitably heading to the top of the charts, and stop that from happening. This is how Mr. Blobby stopped Take That from getting a Christmas #1. How Rage Against the Machine found themselves with the last chart topper of the 2000s rather than X Factor winner Joe McElderry. And of course, it is how Crazy Frog found himself, stopping Coldplay from getting their first ever #1 single. There was a feeling by early 2005 that Coldplay were due a #1. Their first 2 albums had both hit #1, eventually spending more than a year each in the top 40 and selling 16 million copies across the world. The first single from their second album had been In My Place. The fact that it was beaten to #1 by pop idol reject Darius was seen as quote-unquote real music being beaten by manufactured trash. This is unfair to Darius, who co-wrote Colourblind, a perfectly good sub-Enrique ballad, but the narrative started to build nonetheless. Since then, anticipation for new music had reached fever pitch. Coldplay had taken their time, scrapping 60 songs by the time they got to the list they were happy with. In a sign of how many sales this album was expected to get, when it was announced that the album would be delayed by a few months, EMI shares plunged, losing 13% of their value. So when Coldplay announced the first single from this album, Speed of Sound, it seemed nothing could stop quote-unquote real music from taking the top of the charts this time. But that also meant there was a backlash brewing.
I hate Coldplay, can I just say I can't stand
Oh, don't start on Coldplay, they're such an easy target.
That would ensure that #1 would go to someone else. Of course, there were plenty who were already hating on Coldplay. Pitchfork said the band started in the middle of the road and haven't strayed since, while the New York Times reviewer called them the most insufferable band of the decade. Had Coldplay had a better track, however, the fans of the song may have outmatched those who wanted it to fail. This is what happened in 2008, when the band finally got their first UK #1 with Viva La Vida. There was definitely a sense of people being underwhelmed with Speed of Sound, with particular critical attention paid to how much it sounded like an inferior version of Coldplay's own Clocks. Enough people liked the track for it to sell 36,000 copies in its first week, but the combination of spite sales, lack of enthusiasm for the Coldplay track, and people who genuinely loved Crazy Frog meant that Axel F trounced it, selling 4 times more than its rival.
Have you met the Frog? What's he like?
We've met the Frog, he's a bit arrogant to be honest.
Though Speed of Sound's total would have been enough to get it to #1 in 1/5 of the weeks of 2006, it had nothing on the Frog. Axel F ended 2005 as the UK's 3rd biggest selling single, while Speed of Sound was the 41st. Chris Martin ultimately saw the funny side. "We don't like the Frog, and it brings me out in hives," he told XFM. "The point is, that little thing should have its legs chopped off, and I'd like to eat them in a restaurant." I don't know what I'm talking about. We love the Frog. He's friendly, nice. We saw him backstage at Top of the Pops. He was doing all kinds of drugs. He was with all kinds of pond life hanging around him. While it may soothe musos to think that Crazy Frog got to #1 to spite another band they didn't like, that just isn't the case. Sure, a few thousand people probably bought the record for that reason, but it doesn't explain its success in countries whose charts are less petty. After all, Axel F was the biggest selling track in the whole of Europe in 2005. We also can't wholly blame nostalgia for the original Axel F track, as the Crazy Frog version actually outsold the Harold Faltermeyer original. Plus, another song using the Crazy Frog sound, with a different club beat, also made the UK top 20. It is easy to look down on people who like Crazy Frog, but the simple fact is the song is catchy, and people find the character amusing. He thinks he's riding a motorbike, but he's not! He's wearing a helmet, but no trousers! If this was a Monty Python character, your closest culture snob would be mansplaining to you why it was hilarious. But because it's a CGI frog, they look down on it. Sure, there was probably some peer pressure and herd mentality that makes the Crazy Frog ringtone spread as some sort of bizarre status symbol among kids, teens and some adults. But also we have to accept we are ultimately a simple species who find silly noises hilarious. This is definitely true of kids, and you can see Jamba's business model leading to thousands of children buying the single. Your parents may not want to give away their internal organs to sign up to the £5 a week Jamster ringtone service that was bombarding their children on TV, so you can see them trying to avoid tantrums by buying them the CD instead. After all, it's £2 cheaper. A Music Week article on the Crazy Frog phenomenon quoted Pamir Galembi, director of corporate development at Flytext, who put it simply, if you hammer a song long enough on TV, it ends up being number one. As a strategy for marketing a record, it leaves a lot to be desired. Jamba spent tens of millions on Crazy Frog marketing for a record that sold 500,000 copies. But of course, the record was just an extra money spinner, one lucrative tentacle of a strategy built on video games, merchandise, and of course, ringtones. From one angle, this was nothing new. We had been buying Spice Girls snacks, Kiss coffins, and Step spaghetti for a while. But before, the brand had always been secondary to the band. But Crazy Frog showed the opposite could be the case. Music could be a corporate loss leader that would take your brand to places where even adverts couldn't take it in service of selling ringtones. Many people saw records being used to sell ringtones as a bad thing. Prime among them was Malcolm McLaren, the notorious provocateur and former Sex Pistols manager, who said, "Listen to this song and you can hear the death knell of the traditional music industry." But wasn't this just the music industry as normal? The UK's first number one from an advertising campaign came in 1966, when Georgie Fame's petrol commercial track Get Away reached the top spot. Future advertising chart toppers like Room 5's Make Love, The Clash's Should I Stay or Should I Go,
Should I stay or should I go?
and Elvis Presley's A Little Less Conversation proudly advertised they were featured in promos for Lynx, Levi's and Nike respectively. Levi's even created the band Stiltskin especially for a 1994 commercial. Even McLaren's own Sex Pistols ended up with their branding on credit cards. And when it wasn't directly getting in bed with brands, the music industry had always been jumping on fads. From the many songs trying to hop on the Twist bandwagon in the late 1950s, like rave versions of kids' TV themes, songs that sampled nursery rhymes, and sea shanties over the years. Many saw Crazy Frog as the beginning of some bad trends in the music industry, but really it was the end of something. There would be novelty songs after Crazy Frog that did well on the charts. These include Elvis's The Fox, which clearly owes Crazy Frog a debt, and Pink Fong's Baby Shark, perhaps the only song that's more of an earworm than Axel F.
Baby Shark,
But the streaming era was just ahead of us, which would ultimately make novelty tracks irrelevant. A song like Crazy Frog could compete on the charts when all people had to do was buy one CD for a laugh, but to top the charts in subsequent years, people would have to listen to these terrible songs millions of times to compete with real artists. Technology would also make the ringtone obsolete once users could have whatever song they liked on their phones. Although ironically, with the rise of TikTok as a marketing tool, songs had to change again, becoming shorter and designed to break through the noise of the algorithm. As actual ringtones faded into irrelevancy, the average song became more like a ringtone. I'm not going to make an argument that Crazy Frog's Axel F is an amazing track, though it's certainly catchy, much in the same way as Herpes is, but it does hold an important place in the story of the music industry and of the internet. It is perhaps the last of the original memes, back when they would spread out over months and years across emails and forums. Had Daniel Marmadale recorded his clip of his two-stroke engine impression a decade later, he probably would have had a viral week out of it, rather than accidentally building a commercial empire. It is, alongside the Joe McElderry Rage Against the Machine fight a few years later, the last of the great chart battles, in which the British public headed to physical stores with no aim other than to express their annoyance at the music industry. By the time the public denied Joe McElderry his first post-X Factor #1, however, interest in the chart had waned as a youth fixation, leaving Crazy Frog one of the last great chart stories from when people still cared about the top 40. There was no way people knew that they were saying goodbye to an era when they were buying a stupid frog song in HMV. They were just buying a song their kids liked, or they secretly liked because it was catchy, or because they couldn't get out of their heads from all the adverts, or a song that they hated, but they hated Coldplay more. But they were saying goodbye to a time when the charts could still bring us fun stories like this. A time when a frog in a motorcycle helmet with dangly genitals could briefly be the biggest star in the world. Thanks for taking this journey through the 2000s with us. If you liked it, there's plenty more where that came from, so look in our bio for everything that we're doing, and please come back for another journey through some of the weirdest pop music of the noughties.